The sound of gunfire echoed across the training range as Sarah Mitchell steadied her breathing, her finger hovering over the trigger. 4 rejections. 4 times she had been told she wasn't good enough, wasn't strong enough, wasn't Navy SEAL material. The instructors watched from behind bulletproof glass, clipboards in hand, waiting for her to fail again. But today was different. Today, Sarah had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. What happened next in those crucial 17 seconds would shatter every preconceived notion about what it takes to become one of America's most elite warriors.
This isn't just a story about breaking barriers or proving doubters wrong.
This is the raw, unfiltered account of how one woman's relentless determination and an impossible display of marksmanship would force the most exclusive military unit in the world to rewrite their rules forever. Some said it was luck, others called it divine intervention. But Sarah Mitchell knew the truth. Those 17 shots were the culmination of years of rejection, humiliation, and a burning desire to serve her country at the highest level, no matter the cost. Sarah Mitchell's journey began not in the sterile halls of a military recruitment office, but in the dusty backyard of a childhood home in rural Texas. At 8 years old, she would spend hours with her grandfather's old hunting rifle, learning to breathe steady and squeeze the trigger with the gentle precision he taught her. Her grandfather, a World War II veteran, recognized something special in his granddaughter's unwavering focus and natural ability to hit targets that grown men missed. The Mitchell family wasn't wealthy by any measure. Sarah's father worked double shifts at the local factory while her mother cleaned houses to make ends meet. But they were rich in values, discipline, and the belief that hard work could overcome any obstacle. Sarah's bedroom walls were covered not with posters of pop stars or movie actors, but with images of military heroes and elite forces from around the world. Her fascination with the Navy SEALs began when she watched a documentary about their operations during a family movie night when she was 12. Throughout high school, Sarah maintained perfect grades while participating in every physical challenge she could find. She joined the track team, the wrestling team, and even convinced the football coach to let her train with the boys during off-season conditioning. Her classmates thought she was crazy, pushing herself to physical limits that seemed unnecessary for a girl who could have easily coasted through school on her academic abilities alone. But Sarah had a vision that burned brighter than their skepticism. After graduating as valedictorian, Sarah enlisted in the Navy immediately. Her parents were proud but worried. They had hoped she might use her intelligence to become a doctor or lawyer, but they recognized the determination in their daughter's eyes. It was the same look her grandfather had when he spoke about his service during the war. During basic training, Sarah excelled in every category. Her drill instructors were impressed by her leadership abilities, her physical conditioning, and her unwavering focus under pressure. Sarah's first assignment was aboard the USS Lincoln, where she served as a communications specialist. She performed her duties with excellence, but every free moment was spent training. She would run miles around the ship's deck, practice marksmanship whenever possible, and study everything she could about special operations. Her shipmates began calling her SEAL Girl as a joke. But Sarah wore the nickname with pride rather than embarrassment. After 2 years of exemplary service, Sarah felt ready to take the next step. She submitted her application for SEAL training, known officially as Basic Underwater Demolition/SEAL Training or BUD/S. The application process was rigorous, requiring psychological evaluations, physical fitness tests, and extensive background checks. Sarah passed every requirement with flying colors, scoring in the top percentile on the physical fitness test and receiving glowing recommendations from her commanding officers. The day Sarah received her first rejection letter, she was standing on the deck of the Lincoln during a particularly beautiful sunset. The official language was bureaucratic and cold. After careful consideration, we regret to inform you that your application for SEAL training has been denied. While your qualifications are impressive, the program requires candidates who meet specific criteria that best serve the needs of the Navy. Sarah read the letter 3 times, her hands trembling slightly. She had expected challenges, obstacles, and difficult training, but she had never expected to be denied the opportunity to even attempt the training. That night, she called her grandfather from the ship's phone. His voice was steady and reassuring as always. He told her that every great warrior faced rejection and that the measure of a person wasn't in their first attempt, but in their response to failure. Determined to strengthen her qualifications, Sarah threw herself into additional training. She completed advanced combat courses, earned her certification as a combat swimmer, and took on additional responsibilities that showcased her leadership abilities. She also began corresponding with former SEALs who were willing to share advice about the training and selection process. Most of them were encouraging but honest about the challenges she would face as a woman attempting to enter an all-male unit. One retired SEAL, Commander James Rodriguez, became an informal mentor through their correspondence. He had served 3 tours in Afghanistan and understood both the capabilities required for SEAL operations and the institutional barriers that existed within the military. Rodriguez told Sarah that her gender would be both her greatest challenge and potentially her greatest asset, but only if she could prove herself beyond any doubt. Sarah's second application was even more comprehensive than her first. She had documented proof of her advanced training, leadership experience, and combat readiness. She had also received additional endorsements from commanding officers who had witnessed her capabilities firsthand. This time, she felt confident that her application would be successful. The second rejection came 6 months later, with almost identical language to the first. Sarah was devastated but not defeated. She began to understand that her challenge wasn't just about meeting qualifications, but about changing an entire system that had never been designed to include women in its most elite units. During her off-duty hours, Sarah began researching the history of women in combat roles and special operations. She learned about the women who had served in clandestine operations during World War II, the female soldiers who had fought alongside special forces in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the ongoing debates about gender integration in elite military units. She realized that her journey was about more than personal ambition. It was about proving that capability should be the only criteria for military service. Sarah's third application included not only her military qualifications, but also a detailed essay about her understanding of SEAL operations and her vision for how diverse perspectives could strengthen special operations teams. She argued that modern warfare required operators who could blend into various cultural environments, and that women could provide unique advantages in certain operational contexts. The third rejection was the most painful, because it came with unofficial feedback through her chain of command. She was told that while her qualifications were exceptional, the SEAL community wasn't ready for female operators, and that her continued applications were becoming a distraction. Some suggested that she consider other special operations units that were more open to female personnel. That night, Sarah stood alone on the ship's deck, staring at the stars and questioning whether she was pursuing an impossible dream. She thought about her grandfather's stories of overcoming prejudice and adversity during his military service. She remembered his words about persistence being the greatest weapon a soldier could possess. Sarah's fourth application was her most strategic yet. She had spent a year building relationships with current and former SEALs, documenting her training progress, and preparing for every possible objection to her candidacy. She had also arranged for independent evaluations of her capabilities by respected figures within the special operations community. Commander Rodriguez had arranged for Sarah to train with a group of former SEALs who ran a private military consulting firm. They put her through unofficial versions of SEAL training exercises and documented her performance. Their report concluded that Sarah's physical capabilities, mental toughness, and tactical understanding exceeded those of many successful SEAL candidates. The fourth rejection came with an offer that felt like both an insult and an opportunity. Sarah was invited to participate in a special evaluation program that would assess her capabilities in a controlled environment. The program was described as a way to gather data about female performance in special operations training, but Sarah understood it was actually a final test to prove that women couldn't meet SEAL standards. Sarah's commanding officer called her into his office the day she received the invitation. Captain Williams was a fair man who respected Sarah's abilities, but he was also concerned about her career and reputation. He suggested that perhaps it was time for her to consider other paths within the Navy, paths that would allow her to advance without the constant struggle against institutional barriers. Sarah listened respectfully to her captain's concerns, but her response was clear and unwavering. She would accept the invitation to the evaluation program, and she would prove that her capabilities were worthy of SEAL training. She understood that this would likely be her final opportunity, and she was prepared to give everything she had to succeed. The evaluation program was scheduled to take place at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado, California. Sarah would have 2 weeks to prove her capabilities in swimming, running, strength training, marksmanship, and tactical exercises. The evaluators would include active duty SEAL instructors and commanders who had the authority to recommend candidates for training. Sarah spent her remaining time aboard the Lincoln in intense preparation. She refined her physical training, studied tactical manuals, and mentally prepared for the challenges ahead. Her shipmates watched with a mixture of admiration and concern as she pushed herself harder than ever before. The night before Sarah left for California, she received a care package from her family. Along with her favorite snacks and a new pair of running shoes, there was a letter from her grandfather. He wrote about the courage required to chase impossible dreams and the responsibility that came with breaking barriers for others. His final words stayed with her. Some battles are won with bullets, others with determination. Either way, you never surrender. As Sarah's plane touched down in San Diego, she looked out the window at the Pacific Ocean and the naval base where her dreams would either come true or finally end. She had no way of knowing that in just a few days she would face a moment that would change not only her life, but the entire future of women in special operations. The 17 shots that would make history were still days away, but the journey that led to that moment had been building for years, through every rejection, every extra mile run, and every night spent dreaming of wearing the SEAL Trident. The Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado stretched out before Sarah like a fortress of dreams and nightmares. The sprawling complex housed some of the most elite warriors in the world, and as she walked through the gates carrying her single duffel bag, she could feel the weight of countless eyes upon her. Word had spread quickly through the special operations community that a female sailor was being given a chance to prove herself worthy of SEAL training. Sarah's first stop was the administrative building, where she met Commander Patricia Hayes, the officer overseeing her evaluation. Commander Hayes was one of the highest-ranking women in naval special warfare, though she had never attempted SEAL training herself. Her role was to ensure the evaluation process was fair and thoroughly documented, as the results would likely be scrutinized by Pentagon officials and Congress members who were closely watching the integration of women into combat roles. Commander Hayes briefed Sarah on the evaluation protocol with clinical precision. The program would last 14 days and cover every aspect of SEAL training requirements. Sarah would be tested on physical fitness, swimming capabilities, marksmanship, tactical knowledge, leadership under stress, and psychological resilience. The evaluation team included 6 active duty SEAL instructors and 2 psychologists who specialized in special operations selection. The first challenge came before Sarah had even unpacked her belongings. Master Chief Robert Thompson, a 20-year SEAL veteran with 3 combat deployments, approached her in the hallway. His weathered face showed no emotion as he spoke in a voice that could cut through steel. "Mitchell, let me make something clear from the start. I've trained over 200 SEAL candidates and I've seen tough men break down crying for their mothers. This isn't about politics or equality. This is about life and death in places where weakness gets people killed. I don't care what's between your legs, but I care about whether you can do the job when bullets are flying and your teammates are counting on you." Sarah met his gaze without flinching. "Master Chief, I understand the stakes. I'm not here to make a point or break barriers. I'm here because I believe I can do the job and I'm ready to prove it." Thompson studied her for a long moment before nodding slightly. "We'll see. Your first test is at 0500 hours tomorrow. Don't be late." That night, Sarah lay in her assigned quarters, which were separate from the male candidates to avoid any potential complications. The room was sparse and functional, containing only a bed, desk, and small closet. Through her window, she could see the Pacific Ocean stretching to the horizon, its waves reflecting the moonlight like scattered diamonds. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from her grandfather. "Proud of you, no matter what happens. Remember, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action in spite of fear." She smiled, tucked the phone away, and tried to get some sleep before what would likely be the most challenging 2 weeks of her life. The alarm clock screamed at 4:30 in the morning, giving Sarah just enough time to dress and grab a quick breakfast before reporting to the physical training area. 6 other SEAL candidates were also participating in various phases of their training, and they watched with curious mixture of skepticism and interest as Sarah joined them for morning calisthenics. The first physical test was a basic fitness evaluation that would establish Sarah's baseline capabilities. She needed to complete a minimum of 50 push-ups, 50 sit-ups, 10 pull-ups, and run a mile and a half in under 10 minutes and 30 seconds. These were the minimum standards for even attempting SEAL training, and Sarah knew that minimums wouldn't be enough to prove her point. Sarah completed 78 push-ups in 2 minutes, far exceeding the requirement. Her form was perfect, her breathing controlled, and she showed no signs of strain even as she pushed past the required number. The instructors took notes but showed no visible reaction to her performance. The sit-up test yielded similar results, with Sarah completing 91 repetitions in 2 minutes. The pull-up test was where many candidates struggled, as it required pure upper body strength. Sarah gripped the bar with determination and smoothly completed 15 pull-ups, again exceeding the minimum requirement by a significant margin. The final component was the timed run, which would take place on the beach near the training compound. Sarah had run thousands of miles in preparation for this moment, and she felt confident in her cardiovascular conditioning. As she lined up at the starting line with the other candidates, she could see a small group of instructors gathering to observe the test. The starting pistol cracked, and Sarah settled into a steady pace that felt sustainable but challenging. The beach sand made every step more difficult, requiring additional strength and balance. About halfway through the run, she found herself keeping pace with two male candidates who were clearly struggling more than she was. Sarah crossed the finish line with a time of 9 minutes and 42 seconds, beating the minimum requirement by nearly a minute. She was breathing hard but not exhausted, and she immediately began helping other candidates who were still finishing the run. Her gesture of support didn't go unnoticed by the observing instructors.
After the physical fitness test, Sarah was given a brief break before the first swimming evaluation.
The pool complex at the Naval Special Warfare Center was Olympic-sized and filled with crystal-clear water that revealed every movement of swimmers beneath the surface. Sarah changed into her regulation swimsuit and joined the other candidates at the pool's edge. The first swimming test required candidates to swim 500 yards using only the breaststroke or side stroke. The time limit was 12 minutes and 30 seconds. But Sarah's goal was to complete the distance in under 10 minutes. Swimming had always been one of her strongest skills, and she had spent countless hours perfecting her technique in preparation for this moment. Sarah slipped into the water and immediately felt at home. Her strokes were long and efficient, cutting through the water with minimal splash or wasted motion. She maintained a steady rhythm that allowed her to breathe easily while maintaining good speed. The pool echoed with the sound of multiple swimmers, but Sarah focused only on her own lane and her own performance. As Sarah approached the final 50 yards, she could see that she was well ahead of pace for her target time. She maintained her rhythm rather than sprinting, wanting to demonstrate that she could complete the distance without exhausting herself. She touched the wall and immediately looked up at the timing board, which showed a time of 9 minutes and 18 seconds. Master Chief Thompson was standing at the edge of the pool with his stopwatch and clipboard. He nodded approvingly at Sarah's time, but offered no verbal praise. "Good swimming, Mitchell. Be ready for the underwater swimming test in 1 hour." The underwater swimming test was one of the most feared aspects of SEAL training. Candidates were required to swim 50 yards underwater without surfacing, demonstrating both lung capacity and mental toughness. Many strong swimmers failed this test due to panic or poor technique. Sarah spent the hour between tests focusing on her breathing exercises and mentally preparing for the challenge ahead. She had practiced underwater swimming extensively, but she knew that the pressure of evaluation could affect performance in unexpected ways. She visualized completing the distance smoothly and surfacing with air to spare. When the time came for the underwater test, Sarah stood at the edge of the deep end of the pool, taking slow, deep breaths to maximize her oxygen uptake. The instructor explained the rules one final time. Swim 50 yards underwater using only the breaststroke, no surfacing until touching the far wall, and maintain control throughout the distance. Sarah took her final breath and slipped beneath the surface. The underwater world was silent except for the sound of her heartbeat in her ears. She began swimming with long, controlled strokes, focusing on efficiency rather than speed. The key to underwater swimming was conserving oxygen while maintaining forward progress. 25 yards into the swim, Sarah felt the first urge to breathe. This was normal and expected, and she had trained herself to recognize it as merely a signal rather than an emergency. She continued swimming, focusing on her form and counting her strokes to track her progress. At 35 yards, the urge to breathe became stronger. But Sarah's training kicked in. She had learned to distinguish between the desire to breathe and the actual need to breathe, and she knew she still had plenty of oxygen reserves. She maintained her pace and continued toward the far wall. Sarah touched the wall at exactly 50 yards and surfaced smoothly, taking a deep but controlled breath. She had completed the distance with oxygen to spare, demonstrating both physical capability and mental toughness. Several candidates before her had failed this test, making her success even more notable. The remainder of the first week included increasingly challenging swimming tests, including treading water while carrying weights, swimming in full gear, and performing underwater knot tying exercises. Sarah excelled in each evaluation, consistently scoring in the top tier of performance standards. Between swimming tests, Sarah was evaluated on her marksmanship skills with various weapon systems. She started with the standard M4 rifle, firing at targets from multiple distances and positions. Her grandfather's early training served her well, and she consistently hit targets that other candidates missed. The marksmanship evaluations took place at the base's firing range, a state-of-the-art facility designed to simulate various combat scenarios. Sarah's first test involved firing at stationary targets from the prone position at distances ranging from 100 to 300 yards. She needed to achieve a minimum score of 80% accuracy to pass. Sarah's first shot struck the bullseye at 100 yards, and she continued with methodical precision. Her breathing was controlled, Her trigger squeeze was smooth, and her follow-through was consistent. Shot after shot found its mark, and by the end of the test, she had achieved 96% accuracy. The instructors were clearly impressed by Sarah's marksmanship, though they maintained their professional demeanor. Shooting instructor Chief Petty Officer Martinez approached Sarah as she was cleaning her rifle. "Outstanding shooting, Mitchell. Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Sarah smiled as she continued cleaning her weapon. "My grandfather taught me when I was a kid. He always said that shooting was 10% technique and 90% mental discipline." Chief Martinez nodded approvingly. "Your grandfather was a smart man. Mental discipline is exactly what separates good shooters from great ones. You'll need that same discipline for what's coming next week." As the first week of evaluation concluded, Sarah had exceeded expectations in every category tested. Her physical fitness scores were among the highest recorded in the program, her swimming capabilities were exceptional, and her marksmanship was nearly flawless. But she knew that the real challenges were still ahead. The second week would focus on tactical exercises, leadership scenarios, and stress inoculation training. These evaluations would test not just her individual capabilities, but her ability to function as part of a team under extreme pressure. Sarah understood that this was where many candidates failed, not due to lack of ability, but due to inability to maintain performance when everything was falling apart around them. That night, Sarah called her parents to check in and provide an update on her progress. Her mother was excited to hear that things were going well, but her father had a more cautious perspective. He reminded Sarah that her success so far was just the beginning, and that the real test would come when she faced situations designed to break down even the strongest candidates. After ending the call with her parents, Sarah sat at her desk and wrote in the journal she had been keeping throughout the evaluation. She documented not only her performance in each test, but also her observations about the training methods and the reactions of the instructors and other candidates. Sarah's journal entry that night reflected her growing confidence, but also her awareness of the challenges ahead. She wrote about the importance of maintaining humility while pursuing excellence, and about the responsibility she felt to prove that women could contribute meaningfully to special operations. As she prepared for bed, Sarah looked out her window at the moonlit ocean and thought about the path that had brought her to this point. 4 rejections had led to this opportunity, and she was determined to make the most of it. She had no way of knowing that in just a few days she would face the moment that would define not only her career, but her entire legacy in the military. The second week of Sarah's evaluation began with what the instructors called stress inoculation training, though the candidates quickly learned it was better described as controlled torture designed to break their will to continue.
Sarah arrived at the training compound at dawn to find the instructors had prepared an obstacle course that looked like something from a nightmare.
The course stretched across several acres and included rope climbs, wall scaling, mud crawls under barbed wire, weighted carries, and a series of water obstacles that would test every aspect of physical and mental endurance. What made it particularly challenging was that candidates would run the course, while instructors screamed at them, threw cold water on them, and created constant distractions designed to break their focus. Master Chief Thompson stood before the assembled candidates with his arms crossed, his weathered face showing no emotion. "Gentlemen and lady, this week we find out who you really are when everything goes wrong. War doesn't care about your feelings, your comfort, or your excuses. Today you'll get a small taste of what it feels like when the world is trying to kill you and you still have a mission to complete." Sarah lined up with the other candidates at the starting line, her heart pounding with anticipation rather than fear. She had mentally prepared for this moment for years, visualizing herself pushing through pain and exhaustion while maintaining focus on the objective. The whistle blew, and the nightmare began. The first obstacle was a rope climb that extended 30 feet straight up. Sarah attacked it with efficient technique, using her legs to support her weight while her arms pulled her steadily upward. Behind her, she could hear instructors screaming at other candidates who were struggling with the climb, but she blocked out the distractions and focused on her own performance. At the top of the rope, Sarah rang the bell that marked successful completion and began her descent. She could see that 2 other candidates were still struggling to reach the halfway point, their arms shaking with fatigue and their faces showing the early signs of panic. Sarah completed her descent and immediately moved to the next obstacle without looking back. The wall scaling section required candidates to climb over a series of walls of increasing height, the tallest being 12 feet high with no rope or assistance allowed. Sarah approached each wall with calculated aggression, using her momentum and upper body strength to pull herself over each barrier. Her technique was flawless, and she maintained good speed throughout the section. Midway through the obstacle course, the instructors began their psychological warfare campaign. They positioned themselves along the course and screamed insults, criticisms, and discouraging comments at each candidate as they passed. The goal was to break concentration and create emotional responses that would interfere with performance. As Sarah crawled through the mud under razor wire, one instructor positioned himself inches from her face and began screaming, "Mitchell, you think you're tough? You think you belong here? I've seen grown men twice your size quit right here in this mud. What makes you think you're special?" Sarah continued crawling, her elbows and knees burning from the rough ground, her face covered in mud and sweat. She looked directly at the screaming instructor and replied calmly, "Nothing makes me special, instructor. I'm just here to do the job." The instructor was clearly surprised by her composed response and followed alongside her as she continued through the obstacle. "The job? You think this is a job, Mitchell? This is life and death. Your teammates' lives depend on whether you can perform when everything hurts and nothing goes according to plan." Sarah emerged from the mud crawl and immediately transitioned to the next obstacle, a series of heavy sandbag carries that would test her strength endurance. She hoisted the 80-pound bag onto her shoulders and began the required 200-yard carry at a steady pace that she could maintain throughout the distance. The psychological pressure intensified as Sarah moved through the remaining obstacles. Instructors threw cold water on her during the rope traversals, shouted conflicting instructions during the navigation sections, and created artificial time pressure by claiming she was falling behind schedule even when she was clearly ahead of pace. During the final water obstacle, which required swimming across a pool while carrying gear, one of the instructors jumped into the water beside Sarah and began creating waves and distractions. He grabbed at her equipment and tried to slow her progress while shouting that she was endangering her imaginary teammates by being too slow. Sarah maintained her swimming form and ignored the instructor's attempts to distract her. When he grabbed her ankle to simulate an emergency rescue scenario, she calmly turned around, secured a proper rescue hold on the instructor, and continued swimming while towing him to safety. Her quick thinking and proper execution impressed the evaluation team, who made notes about her ability to adapt to unexpected situations. Sarah crossed the finish line of the obstacle course with a time that ranked her second among all candidates. More importantly, she had maintained composure and proper technique throughout the evaluation, despite constant psychological pressure. The instructors gathered to discuss her performance while the candidates were given a brief rest period. The afternoon brought individual stress testing, where each candidate was isolated and subjected to intense questioning while performing physical tasks. Sarah was led to a small room where she was strapped into a device that simulated the disorientation of being underwater in rough seas. While experiencing the spinning sensation, she was required to answer detailed questions about tactical procedures and maintain mental clarity. The questioning was relentless and designed to create confusion and frustration. Instructors asked rapid-fire questions about weapon specifications, mission planning, and emergency procedures, while Sarah fought against nausea and disorientation. They interrupted her answers, criticized her responses, and created artificial time pressure to increase stress levels. Sarah focused on breathing deeply and organizing her thoughts before responding to each question. She had learned through her preparation that the key to stress testing was not to fight the stress, but to acknowledge it and work through it systematically. Her responses remained accurate and complete despite the challenging conditions. After 2 hours of stress testing, Sarah was released and sent to medical evaluation to ensure she was physically capable of continuing the program. The medical staff checked her vital signs, examined her for injuries from the obstacle course, and conducted cognitive tests to assess her mental state after the stress exposure. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the psychologist overseeing Sarah's evaluation, conducted a detailed interview about her experience during the stress testing. Dr. Cold. Walsh was particularly interested in Sarah's coping strategies and her ability to maintain performance under extreme pressure. "Sarah, I've been observing your responses to stress throughout this evaluation, and I'm impressed by your ability to maintain composure. Can you tell me about your mental preparation for these challenges?" Dr. Walsh asked as she reviewed her notes. Sarah considered the question carefully before responding. "Doctor, I think the key is accepting that stress and discomfort are part of the job rather than obstacles to overcome. When I was a kid, my grandfather taught me that pain and fear are just information, not instructions. They tell you what's happening, but they don't tell you what to do." Dr. Walsh nodded approvingly. "That's a mature perspective, and it's consistent with what we see in successful special operations personnel. How do you handle situations where your performance might affect other people's safety?" "That's actually what motivates me most," Sarah replied. "When I know that other people are counting on me, it becomes easier to push through personal discomfort." The stakes make the sacrifice worthwhile. The conversation continued for another hour, covering Sarah's motivations, her understanding of teamwork, and her ability to make difficult decisions under pressure. Dr. Walsh's evaluation would be crucial in determining whether Sarah had the psychological profile necessary for SEAL training. That evening, Sarah joined the other candidates for dinner in the mess hall. The atmosphere was tense, as several candidates had struggled significantly during the day's evaluations. 2 candidates had already been dismissed from the program after failing to complete the obstacle course within the time limit. One of the remaining candidates, a Marine sergeant named David Rodriguez, struck up a conversation with Sarah about the day's challenges. Rodriguez was a combat veteran who had served 2 tours in Iraq and was attempting to cross-train into the Navy SEALs. "Mitchell, I've got to admit, I was skeptical when I heard a woman was going through this evaluation. Not because I don't think women can fight, but because I wasn't sure anyone could handle the mental games these instructors play. You handled that stress testing better than most guys I've served with." Sarah appreciated the honest compliment. "Thanks, Rodriguez. I think everyone handles stress differently, and the key is finding what works for you. For me, it's remembering why I'm here and keeping the bigger picture in mind." Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. "What is your bigger picture? I mean, why put yourself through all this when you could have a successful career in the regular Navy?" Sarah looked out the window at the darkening sky before answering. "I want to serve at the highest level possible. I want to be where the mission matters most and where I can make the biggest difference. I also want to prove that capability is what matters, not gender." Their conversation was interrupted by Master Chief Thompson, who approached their table with his characteristic stern expression. "Mitchell, Rodriguez, you both performed well today, but don't let that success make you overconfident. Tomorrow we start team-based exercises, and that's where we really find out what you're made of." The team-based exercises began the next morning with a mission planning session. Sarah and 5 other candidates were presented with a hypothetical rescue mission and given 2 hours to develop a comprehensive operational plan. The scenario involved extracting a high-value target from a hostile urban environment with limited resources and strict time constraints. Sarah was naturally selected as the team leader for the planning phase based on her performance in individual evaluations and her demonstrated ability to remain calm under pressure. The role came with significant responsibility, as the instructors would evaluate not only her individual performance, but also her ability to coordinate and motivate her team. The team gathered around a table covered with maps, intelligence reports, and equipment inventories. Sarah began by asking each team member to identify their areas of expertise and preferred roles for the mission. She listened carefully to each person's input and began formulating a plan that would utilize everyone's strengths while minimizing weaknesses. Rodriguez volunteered to serve as the team's demolitions expert, having extensive experience with explosives from his Marine service. Another candidate, Navy Petty Officer Johnson, had advanced medical training and would serve as the team medic. Sarah assigned herself the roles of team leader and primary marksman, based on her exceptional shooting scores. The mission planning process revealed Sarah's natural leadership abilities. She encouraged input from all team members while maintaining focus on the objective. When disagreements arose about tactical approaches, she listened to all perspectives before making decisive choices that balanced risk and effectiveness. After 2 hours of intense planning, Sarah presented the team's operational plan to the evaluating instructors. The presentation was thorough and professional, covering every aspect of the mission from initial infiltration to final extraction. The instructors asked challenging questions about contingency plans, equipment redundancy, and risk mitigation, all of which Sarah answered confidently. Master Chief Thompson reviewed the plan with his characteristic stern expression before offering his assessment. "This is a solid plan, Mitchell. You've identified the key challenges and developed reasonable solutions. Now let's see if you can execute it under pressure." The team was transported to a mock urban environment constructed specifically for training purposes. The facility included multiple buildings, vehicles, and simulated civilian populations to create realistic operational conditions. Sarah's team would have to navigate through the environment, locate their target, and extract him safely while avoiding simulated enemy forces. The exercise began at dawn, with Sarah's team inserted at the edge of the urban environment. They moved with practiced precision, using hand signals and predetermined routes to advance toward their objective. Sarah maintained constant communication with her team while scanning for threats and updating their tactical situation. Halfway to their objective, the team encountered their first challenge. Simulated enemy forces had established a checkpoint that blocked their primary route to the target building. Sarah quickly assessed the situation and made the decision to use an alternate route that would require scaling a building and crossing rooftops. The alternate route proved more challenging than expected, requiring advanced rope work and precise timing to avoid detection. Sarah went first, establishing anchor points and security for the rest of the team. Her physical conditioning and technical skills allowed her to complete the climb quickly while maintaining awareness of potential threats. As the team reached the target building, they discovered that the scenario had changed. The instructors had introduced new complications, including additional enemy forces and a compressed timeline for extraction. Sarah had to rapidly adjust her team's plan, while maintaining operational security and team coordination. The target extraction went smoothly, with each team member executing their assigned roles flawlessly. Rodriguez successfully breached the locked door using controlled explosives. Johnson provided medical assessment of the simulated wounded target, and Sarah coordinated the movement back to the extraction point while providing overwatch with her rifle. During the extraction movement, the team came under simulated enemy fire from multiple directions. Sarah immediately took charge of the tactical situation, directing her team's movement while engaging targets with precision fire. Her marksmanship skills proved decisive, as she quickly neutralized several threats that were preventing the team's advance. The exercise concluded with successful extraction of the target and all team members reaching safety within the designated time limit. The instructors gathered the team for immediate debriefing while the events were still fresh in everyone's memory. Commander Hayes led the debriefing session, focusing on leadership decisions, team coordination, and individual performance under stress. She praised Sarah's ability to adapt to changing conditions while maintaining team cohesion and mission focus. The other team members also received positive feedback for their execution of assigned roles. After the official debriefing, Master Chief Thompson pulled Sarah aside for a private conversation. His expression was more thoughtful than stern as he spoke about her performance during the team exercise. "Mitchell, I've been training SEAL candidates for 15 years, and I rarely see the kind of natural leadership you demonstrated today. You kept your team focused, made good decisions under pressure, and adapted to changing conditions without losing sight of the mission. That's exactly what we need in special operations."
Sarah felt a surge of pride at the praise but maintained her professional demeanor.
Thank you, Master Chief. I believe success in missions like this comes from trusting your team and playing to everyone's strengths.
Thompson nodded approvingly. "That's exactly right. Leadership isn't about being the toughest or the smartest person on the team. It's about bringing out the best in everyone and making sure the mission gets accomplished. You understand that better than most candidates I've seen." As the second week of evaluation continued, Sarah faced additional challenges designed to test her limits and reveal any potential weaknesses. She completed advanced swimming tests in rough water conditions, demonstrated proficiency with various weapon systems, and participated in complex tactical scenarios that required split-second decision-making. Each day brought new obstacles and higher expectations, but Sarah continued to excel in every evaluation. Her combination of physical capabilities, mental toughness, and leadership skills set her apart from other candidates and impressed even the most skeptical instructors. However, Sarah sensed that the most important test was still ahead. She had proven her individual capabilities and demonstrated leadership potential, but she knew that her final evaluation would determine whether she would be recommended for SEAL training. Everything she had worked for throughout her military career would be decided in the coming days, and she was determined to give everything she had to achieve her goal. The final day of Sarah's evaluation dawned grey and overcast, with thick clouds rolling in from the Pacific Ocean. She had been told the night before that her final test would be different from anything she had experienced during the previous 2 weeks. Commander Hayes had been deliberately vague about the details, saying only that Sarah would face a comprehensive assessment that would demonstrate whether she possessed all the qualities necessary for SEAL training. Sarah woke before her alarm and spent an hour in quiet preparation, reviewing her mental notes from the evaluation period and centering herself for whatever challenges lay ahead. She had excelled in every test so far, but she understood that final evaluations often included unexpected elements designed to reveal how candidates performed when their assumptions were challenged. After a light breakfast, Sarah reported to the briefing room, where she found not only Commander Hayes and Master Chief Thompson, but also several senior officers she had not seen before. The group included a Navy admiral, 2 senior SEAL commanders, and a civilian who was introduced as a Pentagon official observing the evaluation process. Admiral Rebecca Martinez, the highest-ranking officer present, stepped forward to address Sarah directly. Her presence added significant weight to the situation, as Sarah knew that Admiral Martinez was responsible for all special operations training programs and would likely have the final say on Sarah's recommendation.
"Petty Officer Mitchell, your performance over the past 2 weeks has been exceptional by any measure.
You have exceeded physical fitness standards, demonstrated tactical proficiency, and shown leadership abilities that compare favorably with the best candidates we've seen." However, there remains one final evaluation that will determine your recommendation for SEAL training. Admiral Martinez paused before continuing, her expression serious and thoughtful. The nature of special operations requires personnel who can perform flawlessly when lives are on the line and failure is not an option. Today's test will simulate the kind of high-pressure, high-stakes situation that defines SEAL operations. Sarah listened intently as the Admiral explained the final evaluation. She would be placed in a scenario where she would need to demonstrate precision marksmanship while under extreme time pressure and with the knowledge that her performance would directly impact the safety of others. The scenario would test not only her shooting skills, but also her ability to maintain composure when the stakes were highest. The evaluation would take place at the Advanced Marksmanship Facility, which featured a sophisticated target system that could simulate various combat scenarios. Sarah would be required to engage multiple targets at different distances and angles, while operating under strict time constraints and with limited ammunition. Master Chief Thompson explained the specific parameters of the test as they walked toward the firing range. Sarah would have exactly 60 seconds to engage 17 targets, positioned at distances ranging from 100 to 400 yards. Each target would be visible for only a brief period, requiring her to quickly identify, aim, and fire with perfect accuracy. The scenario was designed to simulate a hostage rescue situation where precision was absolutely critical. Any missed shot could theoretically result in civilian casualties, and failure to neutralize all targets within the time limit would mean mission failure. Sarah would have exactly 17 rounds of ammunition, meaning every shot had to count. As they approached the firing range, Sarah could see that word of her final evaluation had spread throughout the Naval Special Warfare Center. A gallery area had been set up with bulletproof glass, and several dozen instructors, current SEAL trainees, and senior officers had gathered to witness the test. Sarah realized that her performance would be observed by many of the people who would ultimately determine the future of women in special operations. Dr. Walsh, the psychologist who had been evaluating Sarah throughout the program, approached her as she prepared for the test. Sarah, I want you to know that regardless of what happens in the next few minutes, you've already proven yourself in ways that will have lasting impact. Try to focus on the fundamentals and trust your training. Sarah appreciated the encouragement but felt surprisingly calm as she prepared for what would likely be the most important few minutes of her military career. She had visualized this type of scenario countless times and had trained extensively for high-pressure shooting situations. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind, reminding her that shooting was mental discipline more than physical skill. The weapons specialist handed Sarah her rifle, a precision M4 platform equipped with an advanced optic system. She quickly inspected the weapon, checking the action and confirming that it was properly zeroed. The 17 rounds of ammunition were loaded into the magazine, and Sarah inserted it into the weapon with practiced efficiency. Sarah positioned herself at the firing line and conducted her final equipment check. Her shooting position was supported by a bipod, but she would need to transition quickly between targets located at various positions across the range. The target system was computerized and would present targets in a predetermined sequence that simulated the tactical scenario. Commander Hayes provided the final briefing from the safety booth. Mitchell, when I give the command to commence firing, the first target will appear within 5 seconds. You will have 60 seconds total to engage all 17 targets. Each target will be visible for no more than 8 seconds, and some will be visible for as little as 3 seconds. Are you ready to begin? Sarah settled into her firing position and controlled her breathing as she had been taught years ago by her grandfather. Her heart rate was elevated but steady, and her hands were completely stable on the rifle. She looked through the optic and scanned the range, mentally noting the approximate positions where targets would appear. Commence firing. The first target appeared at 200 yards, a standard silhouette that would represent an armed hostile in the simulated scenario. Sarah's rifle swung smoothly to the target, her sight picture aligned perfectly, and she squeezed the trigger with textbook precision. The target dropped immediately, indicating a successful hit. Target 2 appeared at 350 yards, requiring Sarah to quickly adjust her aim point for the increased distance. Her second shot found its mark cleanly, and she immediately began scanning for the third target. The sequence was proceeding exactly as she had visualized, with each shot flowing naturally into preparation for the next. Targets 3, 4, and 5 appeared in rapid succession at varying distances and angles. Sarah's rifle moved smoothly between positions, her shooting rhythm steady and controlled. Each shot was deliberate and precise, with no wasted motion or hesitation. The observers in the gallery watched in fascination as Sarah demonstrated marksmanship that exceeded even SEAL instructor standards. At the halfway point of the test, Sarah had successfully engaged 8 targets without a single miss. Her time management was perfect, and she was well ahead of the pace needed to complete all 17 targets within the 60-second limit. But she knew that the remaining targets would be more challenging, with shorter exposure times and more difficult angles. Target 9 appeared at the maximum distance of 400 yards, requiring precise windage adjustment and perfect trigger control. Sarah's shot took slightly longer to set up due to the increased distance, but her bullet found the center of the target with devastating accuracy. The crowd in the gallery was completely silent, recognizing that they were witnessing something extraordinary. Targets 10 through 13 tested Sarah's ability to engage multiple targets at close range with rapid precision. The targets appeared simultaneously at 100-yard distance, requiring her to transition quickly between them while maintaining perfect accuracy. Sarah's rifle moved like an extension of her body, each shot perfectly timed and precisely placed. With 4 targets remaining and 20 seconds left on the clock, Sarah faced the most challenging portion of the test. The final targets would appear in positions that required awkward shooting angles and would be visible for only 3 seconds each. This was where many expert marksmen would struggle, as the combination of time pressure and difficult shots could cause even experienced shooters to rush their technique. Target 14 appeared at a sharp angle to Sarah's left, requiring her to adjust her body position while maintaining perfect sight alignment. Her shot was instantaneous and accurate, with the target dropping immediately upon impact. Sarah's muscle memory and countless hours of practice had prepared her for exactly this type of challenge. Target 15 materialized at 250 yards with only a small portion visible behind simulated cover. The shot required precise aim at a target area no larger than a dinner plate, with no margin for error. Sarah's bullet struck the exposed portion of the target perfectly, demonstrating the kind of precision that separated elite marksmen from merely good ones. With 10 seconds remaining and 2 targets left, Sarah faced the ultimate test of her marksmanship and mental toughness. Target 16 appeared at 400 yards but was only visible for 3 seconds, requiring her to acquire, aim, and fire with lightning speed while maintaining perfect accuracy. Sarah's shot was released with 2 seconds left in the target's exposure window, and the bullet struck dead center. The gallery erupted in murmurs of amazement, as even the most experienced observers had rarely seen shooting of such caliber under extreme pressure conditions. The final target, number 17, appeared with just 5 seconds remaining on the 60-second time limit. The target was positioned at 300 yards and would be visible for only 3 seconds, representing the ultimate challenge of the evaluation. Every person in the gallery held their breath as Sarah acquired the target and prepared for the shot that would determine her future. Sarah's final shot broke cleanly with 2 seconds remaining on both the target exposure and the overall time limit. The bullet struck the target precisely in the center, completing a perfect 17 for 17 performance that stunned everyone present. Sarah had not only passed the test but had achieved a level of marksmanship that exceeded the standards set for even the most elite special operations personnel. The range fell completely silent for several seconds as the implications of Sarah's performance settled in. She had just accomplished something that many considered impossible under the given conditions, demonstrating not only exceptional shooting skills but also the mental toughness and composure required for the most challenging special operations missions. Master Chief Thompson was the first to break the silence, his voice carrying a tone of respect that had been absent during Sarah's earlier evaluations. Outstanding shooting, Mitchell. In 20 years of training SEAL candidates, I have never seen marksmanship of that caliber under those conditions. Admiral Martinez descended from the observation gallery with an expression of amazement and approval. She had witnessed countless military demonstrations and evaluations, but Sarah's performance represented something truly exceptional. The Admiral understood that Sarah had not only proven her individual capabilities, but had also demonstrated that women could excel in the most demanding aspects of special operations. Commander Hayes approached Sarah with her evaluation clipboard, though it was clear that numerical scores were inadequate to capture what had just occurred. Sarah, your final evaluation score is perfect across all categories. Your marksmanship performance just redefined what we considered possible under those test conditions. As the crowd in the gallery began to disperse, several current SEAL instructors approached Sarah to offer their congratulations and express their admiration for her shooting demonstration. Many of them admitted that they would have struggled to achieve similar results under the same conditions, and all agreed that her performance justified recommendation for SEAL training. Dr. Walsh conducted Sarah's final psychological evaluation later that afternoon, focusing on her mental state during the high-pressure shooting test and her overall readiness for the challenges of SEAL training. Sarah's responses demonstrated the same composure and mental toughness that had characterized her performance throughout the evaluation period. That evening, Sarah received a call from her grandfather, who had somehow heard about her evaluation results through informal military networks. His voice was filled with pride and emotion as he congratulated her on achieving something that many had considered impossible. "Sarah, I always knew you had it in you, but what you accomplished today goes beyond anything I could have imagined. Those 17 shots will be remembered for a long time, not just because of your accuracy, but because of what they represent for the future of military service." Sarah's parents called shortly after her grandfather, having been contacted by a local newspaper reporter who had learned about her evaluation through military sources. Her mother was overwhelmed with pride and relief, while her father expressed his admiration for her persistence and determination in pursuing her dream despite multiple setbacks. As Sarah prepared for bed on her final night at the Naval Special Warfare Center, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. 4 rejections had led to this opportunity, and her performance during the evaluation had exceeded even her own expectations. She had proven that gender was irrelevant when it came to the skills and qualities required for special operations. The next morning, Sarah would receive official word about her recommendation for SEAL training, but she already knew that regardless of the outcome, she had achieved something significant. Her 17 perfect shots had shattered assumptions and opened doors that had been closed to women in special operations. The impossible had become possible, and Sarah Mitchell had written her name in military history with precision that would never be forgotten. The morning after Sarah's historic 17-shot performance dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the overcast conditions of her final evaluation. She woke early, as had become her habit during the evaluation period, but for the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of calm rather than anxious anticipation. Whatever decision awaited her, she knew she had given everything possible to prove her capabilities. Sarah's phone had been buzzing constantly since the previous evening with messages from family, friends, and even strangers who had somehow learned about her evaluation. Word of her perfect marksmanship performance had spread through military networks with remarkable speed, and she was beginning to understand that her achievement had implications far beyond her personal career goals. Commander Hayes had requested that Sarah report to the administrative building at 9 o'clock for final debriefing and official notification of the evaluation results. As Sarah walked across the base, she noticed that many of the personnel she passed seemed to recognize her, offering nods of respect or quiet congratulations that suggested news of her performance had reached every corner of the Naval Special Warfare Center. The administrative building was busier than usual, with several high-ranking officers and civilian officials arriving for what appeared to be an important meeting. Sarah realized that her evaluation had attracted attention from the highest levels of military leadership, and the results would likely influence policy decisions about women in special operations. Sarah arrived at Commander Hayes' office promptly at 9 o'clock and was surprised to find not only the commander but also Admiral Martinez and several other senior officers she recognized from her final evaluation. The atmosphere was formal but positive, suggesting that the news she was about to receive would be favorable. Admiral Martinez stepped forward to address Sarah directly, holding an official document that would contain the evaluation results and recommendations. Her expression was serious but warmly approving, as she prepared to deliver news that would change Sarah's life and potentially impact military policy for years to come. Petty Officer Mitchell, I want to begin by stating that your performance during this evaluation period has been extraordinary by any measure. You have consistently exceeded standards in every category tested, demonstrated exceptional leadership abilities, and concluded with a marksmanship demonstration that will be remembered throughout the special operations community. Sarah listened intently as the Admiral continued, feeling her heart rate increase despite her efforts to remain calm. She had worked toward this moment for years, through 4 rejections and countless hours of preparation, and she was finally about to learn whether her dream would become reality. Based on your performance during this evaluation, it is my privilege to inform you that you are hereby recommended for basic underwater demolition/SEAL training. You will report to BUD/S Class 342 in 6 weeks. Becoming the first woman in history to be accepted for SEAL training. Sarah felt a surge of emotion that she struggled to contain as the magnitude of the Admiral's words settled in. She had not only achieved her personal goal, but had also broken through a barrier that had existed since the founding of the SEAL teams. Her voice was steady but filled with emotion as she responded. Thank you, Admiral. I am honored by this opportunity and committed to upholding the standards and traditions of the SEAL community. I understand the responsibility that comes with being first, and I will do everything in my power to succeed and serve with distinction. Admiral Martinez smiled approvingly at Sarah's response. I have no doubt that you will succeed, Mitchell. Your evaluation performance has proven that you possess all the qualities we look for in SEAL operators. More importantly, you've demonstrated that capability and dedication are what matter, not gender. Commander Hayes stepped forward with additional information about Sarah's transition to Bud/S training. She would be given 6 weeks of preparatory leave to ensure she was physically and mentally ready for the challenges ahead. During this period, she would also participate in several media interviews and public appearances, as her selection had generated significant public and political interest. The media attention was something Sarah had not anticipated, but she understood its importance in the broader context of military integration policies. Her success would influence decisions about opening additional special operations roles to women, and her public statements would be scrutinized by supporters and critics alike. Master Chief Thompson entered the room as the official briefing concluded, carrying what appeared to be a gift wrapped in plain brown paper. His usually stern expression had been replaced by something approaching warmth as he approached Sarah with obvious respect for her achievement. "Mitchell, I want you to have this as a token of respect from the instructor staff. We all agree that your performance has been exceptional, and we're proud to have played a small part in your journey." Sarah unwraps the package to find a custom-made shooting jacket with her name embroidered below the Naval Special Warfare Trident. The jacket also featured a small patch commemorating her 17 perfect shots, which had apparently already become legendary within the Special Operations community. The gesture from Master Chief Thompson was particularly meaningful, because Sarah knew he had been among the most skeptical about her capabilities when she first arrived. His change of heart represented the kind of institutional acceptance that would be crucial for her success in SEAL training and future operations. After the formal briefings concluded, Sarah was given time to make personal phone calls before beginning the media obligations that would occupy much of her remaining time at the Naval Special Warfare Center. Her first call was to her grandfather, who had been waiting by his phone since early morning for news about the evaluation results. "Grandpa, I did it. I'm going to SEAL training." Her grandfather's voice was filled with emotion as he congratulated her on achieving what many had considered impossible. He reminded her that her success was not just personal, but would inspire other young women to pursue their dreams regardless of obstacles or skeptics. Sarah's call to her parents resulted in an explosion of celebration that could be heard through the phone. Her mother was crying with joy and relief, while her father expressed amazement at her persistence and determination. They were already making plans to attend her graduation from SEAL training, confident that their daughter would succeed in this final challenge. The media interviews began that afternoon, with representatives from major news networks, military publications, and online platforms all requesting time with Sarah. She approached each interview with the same professionalism and composure she had demonstrated throughout her evaluation, focusing on her qualifications and commitment, rather than the historic nature of her selection. During her interview with CNN, the reporter asked Sarah about the significance of being the first woman selected for SEAL training and what advice she would give to other women considering military careers in previously closed fields. "I think the most important message is that capability should be the only criteria for military service. I didn't get selected because I'm a woman. And I didn't get selected despite being a woman. I got selected because I demonstrated the skills and qualities that SEAL training requires. I hope my success encourages other qualified women to pursue their goals and shows that opportunities exist for anyone willing to work for them." The reporter followed up by asking about Sarah's famous 17 shots and whether she felt pressure to maintain such exceptional performance standards throughout her SEAL training. "Those 17 shots represented the culmination of years of preparation and training. They weren't lucky or accidental, but they also weren't the most important part of my evaluation. The real test was demonstrating that I could work as part of a team, make good decisions under pressure, and maintain performance when everything was going wrong. That's what SEAL operations require, and that's what I'll focus on during training." Sarah's interviews were universally well received, with commentators praising her professionalism and focus on qualifications rather than politics. Her measured responses helped frame her selection as a natural progression in military integration rather than a controversial social experiment. The following week, Sarah returned home to Texas for a brief visit with her family before reporting to Bud/S training. The small town where she had grown up was buzzing with excitement about their local hero, and Sarah found herself signing autographs and posing for pictures with young people who saw her as proof that any dream was achievable with enough dedication. During her visit home, Sarah spent considerable time with her grandfather, who was now in his 80s but still sharp and engaged. They visited the backyard range where she had first learned to shoot, and he expressed amazement at how far she had come since those early lessons with his old hunting rifle. "Sarah, when I first taught you to shoot, I knew you had natural ability, but I never imagined it would take you this far. What you've accomplished will inspire people for generations, and I couldn't be more proud to be your grandfather." Sarah's homecoming also included a visit to her high school, where she spoke to current students about setting ambitious goals and persevering through setbacks. She emphasized that her 4 rejections had been crucial to her eventual success, as they had forced her to improve her qualifications and develop the mental toughness required for special operations. During her presentation to the high school students, Sarah was asked about the challenges she expected to face during SEAL training, and whether she was concerned about being the only woman in her class. SEAL training is designed to be difficult for everyone, regardless of gender.
My classmates and I will all face the same challenges, and will succeed or fail based on our individual capabilities and determination. I'm not concerned about being the only woman, because I've proven that I belong there, and I'm confident that my classmates will judge me based on my performance, not my gender.
The final week before Sarah reported to Bud/S training was spent in intensive physical and mental preparation. She worked with a former SEAL who served as a private trainer, fine-tuning her swimming technique and reviewing tactical concepts that would be crucial during the early phases of training. Sarah also spent time studying the history and traditions of the SEAL teams, understanding that her success would depend not only on meeting physical and mental challenges but also on earning acceptance within the tight-knit special operations community. She learned about the sacrifices made by SEALs throughout history and the responsibility that came with wearing the Trident insignia.
3 days before reporting to Bud/S training, Sarah received an unexpected phone call from Commander Rodriguez, the retired SEAL who had served as her informal mentor through correspondence. He was calling to congratulate her on her selection and to offer some final advice before she began the most challenging phase of her military career.
Sarah, I've been following your progress, and I want you to know how impressed I am with everything you've accomplished. You've proven that you belong with the best of the best, but now the real test begins. SEAL training will push you beyond anything you've experienced, and you'll need every bit of mental toughness you've developed. Commander Rodriguez continued with specific advice about surviving the infamous Hell Week portion of Bud/S training and maintaining focus during the long months of instruction that would follow. His insights were invaluable, as they came from someone who understood both the challenges of SEAL training and the unique pressure Sarah would face as the first woman to attempt it. The night before leaving for SEAL training, Sarah sat in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by the military memorabilia that had inspired her dreams since she was young. She reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point, from her grandfather's shooting lessons to her historic 17-shot performance at the Naval Special Warfare Center. Sarah understood that her real test was just beginning. SEAL training had broken strong men who were supremely confident in their abilities, and she would face the same challenges while carrying the additional pressure of representing all women in military service. But she also knew that her preparation had been thorough and her motivation was absolute. As Sarah packed her gear for the next phase of her journey, she included a small photo of her grandfather in his World War II uniform. The image would remind her of the sacrifices made by previous generations and the responsibility that came with continuing their tradition of service.
The next morning, Sarah Mitchell reported to basic underwater demolition/SEAL training as the first woman in history to be accepted into the program. Her arrival marked not just a personal achievement, but a historic moment in military integration.
The 17 shots that had earned her this opportunity would be remembered as the moment when capability triumphed over prejudice and when one woman's determination opened doors for countless others. Sarah's story was far from over as she began SEAL training, but her legacy was already secure. She had proven that excellence knows no gender boundaries, and that the only limitations on military service should be an individual's ability to meet the standards required for the mission. Her journey from rejection to acceptance had taken years, but those 17 perfect shots had rewritten history in just 60 seconds. As Sarah disappeared into the demanding world of SEAL training, her story continued to inspire young women across the country to pursue their dreams regardless of obstacles. The girl who had learned to shoot in a Texas backyard had become a symbol of possibility and proof that the most impossible dreams could become reality with enough determination, preparation, and courage. Her 17 shots had hit more than just targets. They had shattered barriers and opened a new chapter in the story of American Special Operations. Sarah Mitchell's name would forever be associated with the moment when the impossible became possible and when one woman's perfect performance under pressure changed the course of military history.